I'm walking, so it may be a challenge to film, but Confessions of a Mask by Yukio Mishima. I have read one Mishima before, and that was The Sailor That Fell from Grace with the Sea, and I think that that is a superior book to this one, and I will kind of dissect that thought process later. But Yukio Mishima and his work, I think, is one of the very few authors who deserves to be read about and understood what his life was like before you dive into his writing and fully appreciate his writing and what he was doing. Mishima is a divisive figure. On the one hand, he was known for his extraordinarily self-aware and emotionally in-depth prose and narratives. On the other hand, he was a man who led a coup against the Japanese government, trying to restore the emperor to his kind of pre-World War II status, and ended up committing ritual suicide because of that. Confessions of a Mask is a book about a young homosexual man growing up in kind of pre-war, during the war, and just post-war Japan. And homosexuality during that time in Japan, and still a little bit today, is kind of this subtle, quiet taboo more than anything else. And so the mask that the character is wearing is kind of this mask of this respectful, like, dignified student over homosexuality, which is not really okay in the society that he's in. It's a little taboo. So we follow him as he has his first crush on a boy in elementary school. And one of the most famous aspects of this particular work is the narrator's fascination with this painting, The Martyrdom of Saint Sebastian, which is this kind of early church figure who died with like all these arrows in his chest and stuff like that. And that image is kind of treated as this very erotic thing by the narrator of Confessions, where he kind of associates violent, glorified death for something greater than yourself as something that is also erotic. And so he kind of searches the rest of his life for that type of thing. So when he gets to World War II, he simultaneously has this intense desire to go and to die for his country. And he has this kind of cowardice that keeps him from wanting to do that, and just kind of keeps him wanting to remain alive, as it were. And so when he is not required to go fight in World War II, this ends up making him feel simultaneously relieved and guilty and ashamed of himself. During the war, and then slightly after the war, he meets this woman and befriends her. It's probably I think the first true friend that he's had in his lifetime. And he befriends her, but she thinks that, well, he's courting her to marry her. And so does, like, the society around them. They also think that he's courting her to marry her. So when he refuses to do so, they are confused. And he really wanted to keep her friendship. So he tried extraordinarily hard to try to force himself to be attracted to her. For example, he kind of like looked at porn, and when he kisses her, he tries incredibly hard to find any sort of like sexual attraction in that, but ultimately he fails, and ultimately he kind of pushes her out of his life, and she gets married, and the ending of the story is a bit ambiguous. So earlier I said that I thought Sailor That Fell from Grace with the Sea was the kind of superior narrative. And the reason I say that is because of something that I've only just kind of realized, which is that I am not a huge fan of work that is purely autobiographical. And what I much prefer is a work that is many parts fragmented extractions of autobiographical material, because I just, there's something that is more fascinating to me or more interesting to me about that than just pure autobiography. However, I do think that this book becomes intensely interesting when you look at the writer, as I said at the beginning. Because the mask that the narrator wears in this story is a mask of basically belonging to a society where he doesn't really feel like he can be completely himself. And if you've ever seen like The Twilight Zone, and like that one episode where like all the characters put on these masks and they become their faces, that kind of idea is exactly what this narrator is trying to accomplish. He is trying to put on a mask, and he's trying to squeeze it on so tightly that he loses what makes him him in the process. But he fails to do that. When he's courting that woman, he tries desperately to put on that mask as tight as possible, but he ultimately fails. He ultimately fails at that. So when I think of like Yukio Mishima as an author, and perhaps I'm projecting something that isn't there, but I don't think I'm too off the mark. When I think of Yukio Mishima, I think of a man committing suicide as a final, desperate act to lay claim and grasp onto an identity that has been eluding him his entire life. Because suicide, that kind of glorified death, is what he's been craving since childhood. I mean, from this kind of autobiographical material, that's what he's been craving since childhood. And so that final death of his is his attempt to kind of grasp onto that identity, and kind of break the mask into, as it were. And I think in his mind, with his suicide, he successfully accomplishes that. And I'm not really like glorifying suicide or anything like that. I'm just trying to understand Mishima and his view of his own death. So yeah, ultimately, that's about it. Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami is a book that was published in 1987. And I've read one Murakami before, which was Wind Up Bird Chronicle. And in the preface to Norwegian Wood, Murakami says that he wanted to create something that was a challenge for him. What wasn't really what he was usually used to writing. And for him, surrealism is where he is most comfortable. He does that in Wind Up Bird Chronicle, he does that in IQ 84, he does it in Kafka on the Shore. But Norwegian Wood is different. It is a completely realistic story. And my friend recommended me this one, and he told me that it was something that you should read when you're around our age, because it is a book about transitions. It's a book about that uncertain, awkward, hesitant period of your life where you don't really know where you're going. In my case, I kind of know the what of what I want to do, but the how eludes me a little bit. But he told me that's kind of what this book was about. And Norwegian Wood it kind of presents itself as a romance. And I say presents because when I think of like the word romance, I'm thinking of kind of like a Western style, genreified, very specific set of tropes and ideas that define the romance genre. And I don't think Norwegian Wood really fits into that. It certainly has elements of romance, but it is also just as much about grief and the processing of grief. The main character is Toru, and his girlfriend, sort of, is Naoko. And these two are kind of drawn together by the fact that their mutual best friend, committed suicide. And they kind of comfort each other through that pain that they both have. And that's how they kind of develop their relationship. And so their relationship, I hesitate to call it unhealthy, but it is definitely bordering on unhealthy as relationships go. But that is kind of how their relationship got started. And they kind of take different approaches to trying to process that grief. Naoko checks herself into this kind of mental health retreat, where it's kind of like this center where like there's nature around it, there's mountains and stuff like that, but there's kind of these specialists, and the idea is that you're gonna kind of get better at this retreat. And Toru, on the other hand, goes to college, and he kind of has the quintessential college experience. He has this very goofy roommate. He meets this guy named Nagasawa, and Nagasawa is somebody that kind of becomes his friend because they both enjoy Western novelists and Western philosophy, and they both kind of enjoy that. And Nagasawa kind of introduces Toru to prostitution, and it kind of as a way to fill the void of Naoko in his life now that she's at this mental retreat. And later on, Toru meets Midori, and Midori is a young woman who falls in love with Toru, and Toru kind of falls in love with her. At the same time, though, Toru kind of just can't be bothered to think all that much about her. His kind of thought space is consumed by Naoko, and Midori kind of feels resentful towards him for that. But This book is, as I said at the beginning, about transitions. I was kind of going to write it off, but in those last 50 to 70 pages, something just clicked for me about Murakami's vision and how he's executing it and what exactly he's trying to achieve with it. What really struck true to me, though, about those final 50 to 70 pages is that the transition that needed to occur, that kind of attitude shift, that kind of perception shift that needed to occur in those final 70 pages, it occurs suddenly. It doesn't occur with subtlety. It doesn't occur with any sort of, it happens. And that to me struck very true, because in my own life, when a transition needed to occur, it always just something clicked into place. An attitude was changed, a perception was changed, and that is how Murakami presents it. And I found that rang true. I think Wind Up Bird is a superior book to Norwegian Wood, though, of the two that I've read. And the reason for that has to do with Murakami's strengths as a writer, and it has to do with his weaknesses as a writer. His strengths as a writer is that he is able to create this deeply layered analytical thematic framework for his works, and that framework is weaker, it is less complex than in Wind Up Bird Chronicle. And the weaknesses of the two are pretty much the same. What are the weaknesses? I think Norwegian Wood is, and specifically Murakami's writing style, is unfortunately rather boring. And I don't use that word lightly. I don't remember the last time I called something boring. I've called things slow before. But Murakami's style, there's something about it that bores me. My eyes will glaze over whole sections. And I'll have to reread them. And sometimes I don't really feel like rereading them. And the second component, to me, has to do with the lesser component and is a lot more grievous of an error, in my opinion. And that is that Murakami's writing does not evoke emotion to me. When I am reading something, to me the perfect book, something that maintains that thematic framework that I was discussing earlier, while simultaneously evoking really, really deep emotions. Murakami is very good at constructing the first aspect. But as for those deep emotions, I just didn't feel any. I mean, while I was reading Norwegian Wood. And I didn't feel any while I was reading Wind Up Bird either. And I don't know, when a book is about grief, and when a book is about processing grief, and that kind of whole process, then I think, as somebody who's kind of dealt with the loss of a friend and the death of a close friend, that I should be feeling some sort of emotion when I'm reading that, no? And I just don't feel that with Murakami's work. And so ultimately, even though I do plan on reading like Kafka on the Shore, and I do plan on reading like IQ 84, I don't think Murakami will ever really be in my top 10 of writers. So yeah. See ya.